Hello, it's Nancy Smay and Dawn Alexander with special guest Roni Loren here today to talk about writing productivity. Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. How are you?
I think I'm doing okay, all things considered. Just another crazy day in quarantine, you know?
Yep.
Just living the dream.
Yeah, it's getting old.
Yeah, it got old about 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. I feel like I've been optimistic. And then today, for some reason, I hit some kind of optimism wall. And now I'm kind of like, oh.
Yeah, me and my husband keep trading back and forth our optimistic and pessimistic days. So we just, as long as we're not on the same day, we're okay. Because the other one can cheer the other one up. But yeah, it goes back and forth.
Yes. Well, good. Well, so before we pop into our main topic, which I understand, Roni, that you have like extensive worksheets that you're going to talk about.
I have some. There are some in the class that I'm teaching, and I do love a worksheet. So
okay. that word like makes me cringe. But I'm excited to hear how you're using them and what kind of planning you do. But Dawn, did you tell me that Roni has some kind of a story to share?
Yes, Roni has. You're going to tell us about your new friends.
Yes. So we just moved right after the day after Christmas. So before all of this happened, but we moved to a rural-ish area. And so the house behind us has horses, and we can see the horses from our yard, and kind of have been enjoying that. And then last week, a herd of alpacas showed up. So now we have alpacas behind the house, and we can see them from our living room and everything. And so, yes.
So are alpacas and llamas the same thing?
Alpacas are like small llamas. So they're like the size, a little bit maybe bigger than a goat, but about goat size, and super cute. They have like really puffy hair and very curious. They like to pop up their head and just very interested if you go over there. So when we're having down days here, I tell my husband, you need to go, spend time with the alpacas. They're like therapy animals. So he goes over to the neighbor's house, looks at the alpacas and sends pictures and things. But yeah, so we have like a little zoo behind us that we can go and check out, which is fun because my son is like allergic to every animal known to man, so we can't have any pets. So we were just adopting the neighbors, horses and alpacas and stuff, and we're gonna go just, be weird about it and go stand by their fence and look at them.
Do you know the neighbors, or do you just sort of love the alpacas from a distance?
Well, they're up against the fence, so we'll go like walk by the fence and see them, but we haven't met our neighbors yet because we had just moved in and then all of this happened.
Oh, right.
So we haven't been able to go over and say, hey, we're new to the neighborhood, who are you? So hopefully when I can meet them, they'll let me actually touch the alpacas. So that's the goal.
Are alpacas nice? Do they seem friendly?
They're sweet. So I learned that llamas, because sometimes like you'll go around town and you'll see they have like horses and then they'll have like one llama, or they'll have cows and one llama. And I found that the llamas they're like guard dogs. So they will bond with whoever they're pinned with. So and donkeys do the same thing. So if you see just one donkey amongst like horses, that's why. So they will like watch out or, go on attack if like a coyote comes or something. So I don't know if these alpacas do the same thing, but I know the big llamas do. So when you go walk by, like they'll kind of look at you like, what are you here for? And so I wouldn't go messing with them, especially the llamas are big.
Don't mess with llamas.
I don't think the little alpacas could do too much damage.
Huh. I have never really given a lot of thought to llamas or alpacas. And now I'm like, it turns out there's a lot I don't know.
Right. I'm learning because we came from like the suburbs and we weren't living in the country before this. So it's a new experience.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the important question is, do any of your alpacas have a hat?
No, they don't, but they do have name tags with names. I'm trying to get close enough so I can see what they name.
What kind of name tags? Like the hello, my name is?
Little collars like a dog.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's so cute.
If there's a comment section anywhere, I'll post pictures after this. So
Leela says I need to go find an alpaca. Mm-hmm. They do sound like they would just bring some joy during these dark days.
Yes. They're very calming. They seem very, chill. So.
Well, and I feel like you should be out there with your phone taking pictures of their name tags so we can zoom in and be like, oh, that one's name's Layla. Oh, that one's name's,
Yeah, I'm hoping their names are really like cute or super fun or something weird. That's what I'm hoping. We'll see.
It's not just a number. It's not just
Right.
435.
Nobody get close enough to see the name tag. My eyes aren't that good.
Sounds like a project.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about writer productivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have you, because you are working on this. You've done some blogging about it, and you've got a class coming up.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm kind of obsessed with productivity. I have been for a long time. So I have my stack of books I've been using to work on the class, but it's about this high. So yeah, I'm teaching a class called Fighting for Focus. So basically a class about bringing all the distractions, that you have in your life, kind of putting them in a corral and figuring out how to get your writing done. And then also creating space for creativity and mind laundering, because that's the flip side of productivity, is that we also need to have that space in order to be productive.
Did you just say mind laundering?
Mind laundering.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I've never heard that term, but it makes sense.
Yeah, so I think so. Like if you're, into productivity and you're looking at all of your, your word counts and your different things you're doing, a lot of times we forget that in order to be productive, we have to be creative first. And so part of my productivity class is how do you create the space so that your phone is not always invading and all of the distractions that we have are invading every moment where we would have time to like think about things or let our mind go into that default mode network, which is what our minds are in when it wanders. So I cover both sides in the class, basically.
Okay, I think Nancy totally needs to make us one of our little banners that says, in order to be productive, you have to be creative first.
I can do that.
Ooh, we have banners.
We'll do this ahead of time, and we won't actually talk about it as we're like...
I think this works well. We're very casual.
Yeah, we're very casual.
But I think that's a great point. And I think that's a point that I know a lot of my clients miss out on, because they're looking at all these people who write 9 million words a day, and they'll say things like, oh, I only wrote 250 words today because I had to stop and think about things, and or I haven't been able to sit down and write it all yet because I'm still thinking, but I'm so far behind and I wish I could just sit down and write. And so I think it's important to make that point that thinking time is productivity time as well.
Yes. So, and I am a slow writer, so I am not the person who's writing a book a month. Like that is not who I am. I have a lot of books out there, but it took a long time. I've been writing for 10 years. Well, I've been published for 10 years. I've been writing before that. But I think what you're speaking to is, I talk about in the class, busy versus productive. And I think we're all busy. So when people ask, how are you doing? We say busy like it's a feeling, and not a state. So you don't, want to be busy really. Busy means you're just doing things and constantly moving, and you're not doing it with intention. You're not thinking about your process. You're just kind of like existing, surviving every day, getting your things as much as you can get done. But then by the end of the day, you feel like, did I actually get anything done? Or I don't feel good about today. So what I think of as productivity or being productive is you set your intentions at the beginning of the day. I want to get these 3 things done, or whatever your priorities are. And then you do those. And at the end of the day, you can look back and say, I set out to do these things. I did these things. And it might not be a word count. It might be, I had to brainstorm today, or I had to work on my website today, or I had to do all, whatever. But the combination of intention with then fulfilling, I think, is what gives you that productive feeling at the end of the day versus, I feel like I worked all day. I was constantly busy, but I don't feel like I got anywhere. So I try to put a focus in the class. We talk a lot about intentions and setting your priorities and those things so that you can feel productive versus just overwhelmed and busy.
So what do you, go ahead, Nancy.
I think we're probably headed in the same place. I think the question that people, maybe something they have to define for themselves as they're setting their intention is what is productivity to me, or maybe what is productivity to me today? What, looking at the project or whatever it is you're approaching and deciding, what at the end of the day, what will having been productive on this look like to me or feel like to me? Because for me, I think as a writer, it is almost a feeling. I mean, I'm a very check the box kind of girl. Like I like to accomplish things. And so I do go by word count. But I also need to feel like I've made progress. And that could be word count, or it could be figuring out, when he goes here, what's he going to do? Who's he, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think scoreboards are helpful. I mean, I am definitely into the checkbox. Like you can't see it, but in front of me is one planner, on the left is another planner, and this is this planner over here. So I'm like into the checkbox. And I do appreciate a scoreboard. So like if you see back here, I can kind of point. I have a Kanban board back there where that's all of my tasks for my quarterly goals on little Post-it notes. So I get to move Post-it notes. I feel very productive when I move a Post-it note. And then the little poster on the wall back, I can't point backwards here, this way.
Always, yeah.
My word count calendar. So I do record my word count, but I do not hold myself to a word count per day because the way my brain works, I have to have thinking time. And I get stressed out by the fact that if I said I was going to write 2,000 words and then I got stuck in the book and had to think about it and didn't get to 2,000, then I'm stressed out. So I know in general how many words I need to write in the month, because I'm under a deadline. I'm traditionally published. I have that deadline waiting for me. But I don't like to put a specific word count per day or say I have to get words on the page every day, because no, I really don't. Like if I sat and had a problem in the book and went back and read through things and worked through a problem in the book, like that is still writing, even if I'm not getting work on the page. Other people, it's very much like an accountant. You get this many words a day and this is what works for you, and you can, check off, and that's great too. So you have to find what works for you. You have to not get so attached to the scoreboard, or you put things on the scoreboard that count. Like I will put brainstorming session and I can move it, like it is a checkbox still, without having the word count, thing, because that word count can lock you up if you're the kind of writer who needs thinking time. It can make you, get more blocked.
Leela says, productivity is being able to get what I need to complete for X tasks done in all different areas. So she sounds like a checkbox kind of girl too. And then James says, bullet journals are great for checking those boxes. Yes. I've heard a lot about bullet journals. Yeah,
I've tried the bullet journals. I like things look really pretty. I use stickers in my planners and stuff.
Oh, you like those.
Our skills are not good enough for the bullet journal. Like, my husband uses the simple bullet journal and he doesn't, it doesn't have to be pretty, so it works for him. But yeah, there's people that are doing amazing things with bullet journals.
Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at productivity and you're talking about, you got to find you got to figure out what it means for you and checking off your boxes or setting your intentions and that kind of thing. So talk a little bit about what kind of factors are going to influence that. And how do those change compared to when, 3 months ago, when we were living in a completely different world than what we're living in now?
Yeah, I think, and we might get to this later in a different question, but because I like the checkbox, I think sometimes we don't put things on our list that we think aren't important because they're just like everyday things. But like right now, self-care should be on your checkbox. Like if you're a checkbox person, we need to have like lots of self-care right now because everything has changed. Your whole stability in your world has changed. You have kids home. If you're, like me, your husband's working from home too, or whatever the case may be. And so you have to give yourself some grace. But if you're the kind of person like me who likes the checkbox, I will put down like have some alone reading time. Like that is the thing that I put on my list because that makes me a better writer and it makes me a calmer person. But I think we often, especially in times when things are crazy like this, which we've never been through anything like this, but we are trying to push ourselves to be the same person we were before this on like, I used to be able to get this many words done a day and get this much done a day. And now I'm not. So something's wrong. I'm home all day. I shouldn't be able to get this done. So I think knowing that the world is a different place and giving yourself a little grace on that, and then putting in some, taking care of yourself things and, downtime things to help replenish because, we're in a different world right now. So it's not going to look the same as it did 2 months ago.
The things that we produce might be different things than what we were producing a month ago, 3 months ago. It may feel just as productive to me today to say that I spent an hour playing card games with my kids when 2-3 months ago, that would have been, like, oh, well, we'll do that on the weekend,
Right.
The world is just, your definitions of your own life must change as the world has changed, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we're looking at, if the world goes back to normal, when the world goes back to normal, because it's going to, some kind of normal, whatever that is. So when the world goes back to normal and we're not dealing with a global pandemic, what kind of factors do you look at to decide your productivity? Things that would influence what you can get done, what you can't get done, and how do you adjust those?
So I like to do quarterly planning so that I have kind of my big picture goals. So usually I have, like I said, the Kanban board is in 3 sections. So one will be my writing goals. One will be, since I teach classes, I have a section for classes. And then the other one will be like personal goals, or if I'm taking my own classes, like that I'm taking from somebody else, things like that. So when I sit down at the beginning of the day to write down, like, what are my intentions today? What are the 1 to 3 things is usually what I go with, like 1 to 3 major things that I want to get accomplished today. I look at those bigger picture goals of what is going to move the ball forward on these things. Like, what is going to move forward on my writing or classes? Like, for the last 2 weeks, I've done 0 writing because I've built an entire class from scratch, which meant writing, I think it ended up being like 35 lectures or something. So I was writing, it wasn't fiction, but it was still going towards my goals. It was my plan for, this quarter to put it together a new class. So that's what I'm going to do. Next week, I have edits back on a book. So once again, can't write. I have to go and do my edits and revisions and send that by the end of the week. So I think each week you look at what your big picture is, like, make sure that you're going towards that, because one of the huge parts of the class that I'm talking about is all the distractions we have, right? As writers, we're supposed to be on social media, we're supposed to be doing all these things, and that eats up all of our time. So if you find yourself in the middle of the day and you're like, you've been on Facebook and you've done Twitter and you've done all of these things and you're chatting, on the side and all of this stuff, and then you didn't get anything on your main goals done, that's when you get that feeling at the end of the day that, like, I was really busy, but I don't feel good at the end of the day. I don't feel like it was a great day. And it's a lot of those distractions. If you're not paying attention to them, or you don't do all the things to corral them, it will eat away your day and your productivity.
So I know that talking about distractions, I know that you do a screen-free summer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I do it for my son, not for myself. So let's specify. I have to get screens. But I have done 30-day social media, blackouts and things like that before. But years ago, my son, who's now 12, was like obsessed with his iPad and always on video games. And I was just feeling that, like, mom thing that you're like, this has gotten to the point that it's too much. And he was, snapping at me when I told him to get off of it or whatever. So I decided, because he's lucky enough to have a mom who reads all the productivity books and, like, is going to do weird things to him, like make him have device-free summer. I'm sure he's really happy he has that mom. But I decided he wasn't going to have any devices at all for the summer. And that meant he didn't have a phone at the time, but no iPad, no video games. He could watch movies, with us as a family, but otherwise none. And it was very hard the first 2 weeks. And then it was wonderful. And he actually asked for it the next summer, because it meant that we played board games together. It meant that we planned different activities. It meant that we had more family time. And really, I don't even know where his iPad is now. Like, it literally, it's packed in a box somewhere. He doesn't use it anymore. Not to say he doesn't play video games, because he does, and he has a phone now. But it really changed the whole dynamic. And so he inspired me, because I'm like, I could see that, change in his personality, and he was calmer and all of these things. So that's when I started looking at my own, phone time and social media time. And I go in really in the class, I have probably 15 lectures on all the different distractions and how you can, corral them or change them. Like, on my phone, I don't keep, Facebook isn't on my phone, or my social media apps aren't on my phone at all anymore. Because I really did see how big of a difference it can make, just kind of cutting yourself off from all of that and reevaluating what's important and what you really need and what you don't, and what was distracting you, and all those things. So yeah, we've done 2 device-free summers. If anybody's interested, I blogged through the whole things, like all of the things that we're doing and the resources I used and stuff. So if anybody's interested, it's on my blog at RoniLoren.com.
And so did you find, when you did your social media blackout and started taking things off your phone, did the productivity immediately change, or does it take a while? Because if you're looking at people who are thinking, okay, so I did this for 3 days and it's not working, so I'm going back to playing,
the first
Toon Blast.
The first week because I did the 30 days of no social media. the first week was really hard. It was like, and I had already done a lot of work of like backing off of social media before that. So it wasn't like I was because it used to be the day where I had TweetDeck, anybody remember TweetDeck? I don't know if it's still around, but I would have it like all the little chimes going off at every tweet and like 5 columns open while I was writing. And like now the thought of that is like, oh my God, how did I function? So I had already done a lot of dialing all of that back. But yeah, when I did the 30 days, I think it was either 2018 or 2019 that I did this. And the first week I was like, kept picking up my phone and like the apps weren't there. And I would press like the space where the app was. So I had to put things there that like my Kindle app instead and put a replacement task. But the first week's really hard. So if you're going to try to do it, don't make decisions in the first week. And then like the middle of the second week towards the middle of the month is when my productivity like went into overdrive. I completed a whole 8-week romance writing course that I teach like from scratch in a month during that time. So it really was a great thing. And if I didn't have to be on social media for my job, which is part of our job, I probably would have stayed off of it. But because it is part of our job, one of our challenges is how do you balance it? How do you use it for good and then not let it, take all the stuff from you, all your productivity or all your, peace, really. So.
Do you think that because the idea of like a social media ban makes me like, but I haven't actually found it. Maybe it's a problem and I'm not aware of it, but when I'm writing, I am only writing. Do you think that some people, like I'm not going to say no social media at all, but I do set a rule with myself. Like, okay, you are writing right now. So for this hour, that's what you're doing. And you don't need to worry about anything else. So for some people, is that an okay version, do you think, of setting limits so that you can be productive in the space you're allowing yourself?
Yeah, 100%. So in the class, I give like 3 levels of like, one of my plans is called Not Today, Satan. That's like the most extreme one. But yeah, I still have social media. So I went back to it after the 30 days. And, I think most people, if you already have the ability to sit down for 2 hours and be in deep work mode, that's a term by Cal Newport. But if you can be in deep work mode where you're completely focused on your book, you're not being distracted by other things, like you're doing it, like that's fine. You have your space. And that's what I'm talking about in the class. Like, how do you create that space? Because a lot of people, I think you'd be surprised if you're a person who has natural focus. A lot of people, it's not like that. They're writing in between a lot of things. Their chat's going off in this corner, their tweets are going off in this corner, the phone's ringing, and they're writing in between that. And what you're getting done, it takes us, I think it's, at least 20 minutes or whatever to get back on task, because we really can't multitask unless we're doing a habitual movement. Like you can walk and listen to music, but you can't, do 2 high-level tasks at the same time. We're not multitasking. So we're really switching, and that switching leaves that attention residue every time. So every time you check Twitter, every time you go on Facebook in the middle of your book, you've just reset your clock again for 15 to 20 minutes of getting back to focus. So, and there's all kinds of things you can do. There are app blockers, there are internet blockers, there, and I go into all of this, really deeply in the class, but yeah.
Scrivener have like a, if you write with Scrivener, it has like some kind of a distraction-free writing mode or something?
Composition mode. Yeah, composition mode. So, and there are other apps like OMM Writer that, a blank screen, but yeah, I've definitely used the Focus app where it cuts off your internet while you're writing. So when I'm in my most distracted times, I've utilized that. And now I've trained myself mostly to do the deep focus so I can not have to block it. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you in the class, if you come in my class, I'm not going to say you have to get off of all social media and you never use it again. Like, I know that it's part of our job. So the challenge is, where do you balance it, and how do you block your time to where your writing time is protected? And then also where you create that space, like we talked about at the beginning, the creativity space. Because if every time you're waiting in line at the grocery store, you're looking at your phone, if you're cooking and listening to a podcast always, if you're always on and never letting your mind space out, like your all those story ideas, all those solutions to the problems in your book that you're trying to figure out, they're never going to come to you because there's too much noise. So it's not just the blocking it out so you can write, it's the giving yourself space so that you can go on a walk and not have any other distraction. Just like think, like let your mind just wander.
I think that scares some people, that like blank slate. I found that blow drying is that time for me, because I can't do anything else. It takes 2 hands and it's loud. So like I have thoughts when I'm blow drying my hair, and it takes a long time. So it's long enough to like, I don't know, I'll come up like out of the bathroom in the morning and be like, oh, that's such a good idea. I'm going to go do that, you know?
Yeah, it's the same thing with showers. Like people say they get, ideas in the shower. It's because we can't have our phones in there, although they now have products that will let you have your phone in there, which I'm like, come on, like, can we really? That default mode network that gives us all of our ideas, that thing that makes connections in our brain, that the creativity part is like 60 to 80% of our brain. And so if we don't ever activate it, if we never give it the space to do it, like our books will start sounding the same because we're not getting fresh ideas. We're not connecting disparate information, which is what creativity is, taking two different things that you don't think go together and making it, into something different. So the distractions really is beyond eating into your writing time. I think the bigger problem is it eats into our creative brain. So
that's what I worry about with the kids, because I have a 12-year-old as well. And when he is off screens, which is like 11 to 4 at our house, he's got his earbuds in, and it's a podcast or it's YouTube or it's music, or I'm like, why don't we just not, like, let's just have some not time. And now they listen to audiobooks all the time. And I love audiobooks, but I'm like, you know what? There has to be some time where you have to figure out what to do all by yourself with your own brain, like without something coming at you.
Yeah, I read, I don't remember what book it was from, but it said, when was the last time you saw a teenager staring into space?
Yeah.
And and I talk about it in the class, but I wrote my first book. It was a full novel when I was 16. I started it when I was 15. It was New Kids on the Block fan fiction, for those who.
And someday we're going to talk her into putting it out into the world. That is like one of my goals.
But I still have it. It's 150 typed pages, and I'm thinking, and like the internet, I'm going to age myself, but the internet came in kind of right at the end of high school, beginning of college for me. So this was before I had access to the internet. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I would have written all the poetry I wrote, the melodramatic teenage poetry I wrote in the novel when I was 16, if I had had the internet. Probably not. I was bored and alone with my thoughts, and I would put into story. And so I don't know I would be here now if I hadn't done that, because that's when I decided I want to be a writer. So it does worry me. That's why I have been a little, with the device-free summers and stuff with my son, because I'm like, I don't want people to lose that, and the next generation to lose that time, or to always think that you have to have something going, and not just be quiet for a minute.
So what I'm hearing is productivity can come from doing nothing. It seems like those two things would be completely at odds, but in reality, you almost need the doing nothing in order to be productive.
Right. And if you're the type of person like me, I don't know if you'll ever talk about the Clifton Strengths Finder here, but I am a number.
We had Becca time on last week.
We had Becca on, so we got it.
I'm a number 3 achiever. So I like to always be having to do things, in doing things. So what I've had to do is I label it in my head as, if I'm going for a walk without any stimulation, I am doing something. I am going to have creative time. So it feels like a to-do for me, and so I can justify it there. Then I'm doing nothing, because if I say I'm doing nothing, then my brain's like, oh hell no, we're not doing nothing. We got to do something. So if I label it in a way that this is work, this is what I need to do, it helps me kind of more likely to do it and not be oh well, I should be doing something. No, I am doing something. So yeah, and we all get our energy. So when your default mode network kicks in, we get our energy from that. So if you never have that, your energy to write is going to also wane, because you're going to your brain never has rested. So, I mean, it's never really resting, but it's resting in that creative space. So
that makes sense.
Doing something.
So tell us your top 3 suggestions here. Tell us, how do we deal with this? What do we do?
I came prepared, so let me check my notes here. But first, I mentioned it already, but right now, because of the time we're in, self-care on your to-do list, I think, is a thing that most of us haven't done in the past that we need to do now, is to make that a priority, because we're just going to run ourselves into the ground with anxiety and all the other things that's going on. So put it in your to-do list every day to, get outside, get some sun. As someone who's had a vitamin D deficiency twice during the summer, because I'm always inside from the heat, get some sunlight, people. It really does make a difference. But so self-care on your to-do list.
Can I jump in for just a second on the self-care? I think it's important when people talk about self-care to point out that is different for everybody, because I think people sometimes have this idea that self-care is taking a glass of wine and going and taking a bubble bath and relaxing, or whatever the male version is of that. I don't know. But I think it's always important to point out it's whatever makes you feel happy.
Yes.
And so if self-care is going and riding the bicycle for 3 miles without any guilt about the fact you've done that, then that's what you should do. Or if it's going out and sitting in your garden and staring into space, or if it's repainting the wall that's been driving you crazy for the past 5 years and now you randomly have time to do it. So I think that's important to point out, is that it doesn't have to be relaxing. It just has to be fulfilling.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like for me this week, self-care has been watching many episodes of Felicity in the afternoon.
As you do.
Or like I'll joke because I put stickers in my planner. I'm like, I'm going to play with my planner, but that to me is self-care. I get to like make my plan for the week and it's relaxing. And, so yes, that's a good point to make, is that everybody's self-care is going to look different. I have a huge bathtub in my new house. It's very nice. I've not used it once, which will hurt Dawn's feelings because I know
it breaks my heart. But it's okay.
Come over and use it. But that's not relaxing to me. So that's not self-care for me. So that's a good point. My second one was set your intentions for the day. So I think a lot of us have to-do lists, but if you can pick your 1 to 3 priorities for the day, not 10 priorities, for all of us overachievers, if you get at the end of the day and you've accomplished these 1 to 3 things, you're going to feel good. So that's what you're trying to pick out, is like, in some days it might just be 1. Like for me last week, it was, if I can write 5 lectures today, I feel good. I'm done. If nothing else gets done beyond that, I feel productive. So take time either at the end of the day before or first thing in the morning to say, okay, this is my intention for the day, so that you know where your boat is headed. Because if you don't have a direction, you're going to go in 10 different ones. So I think that has really helped me to set each day my priority.
So what happens if you don't hit those though? What happens if it's the end of the day and you've only managed to do one thing?
Yeah, then you adjust your plan, because you can put it on your plan for tomorrow, or you can say, did I put too much on my list today? Was it too high of an expectation? Is it too high of an expectation that I was going to write 5,000 words and also create a class and also do this? Probably. Or evaluate if this wasn't a, too high of an expectation, what got in the way? Did I get sucked into Facebook for too long? Did I get distracted by this, and this? Was I watching the news nonstop? Because that's, one of the distractions right now. It's a big one. So look at your day and say, like, what were the roadblocks, so that you can figure out ways to corral those, so that you don't have, the same thing come up the next day. Because it's either you set your expectations too high or something got in the way, right? Like there's only really 2 options at the end of the day. So, and something got in the way might be out of your control. If your kid got sick, or, you had to run to the grocery store for something and it was unexpected, like, we're all human, so you got to give grace too. Yeah. And my last one was track your time. So this is one of the exercises I do at the very beginning of the class, which is, when I mean track your time, I mean, at the beginning of the day, you have broken down by half hours. You might know what you plan to do, but tracking your time is writing down what you actually did. So we often overestimate and underestimate. So we overestimate how much time we spent on the right things, and we underestimate how much time we spent on the other things. So if you're getting to the end of the day, you're not hitting those priorities, you're not feeling like you got what you wanted to get done, the time tracker can actually help you to see where those holes are. Like, where did I lose track? What triggered me getting completely off focus or off task? Like every time I went on Facebook, it took me an hour to get back to my book. Or, every time I have coffee, then I get a really good deep work session, like, because it triggers me to focus. So you can really look at what your kind of triggers are, for good or for worse, and then where your holes are in your plan that didn't work out. And be honest on your tracker, like every hour, just kind of write, like, it doesn't have to be like every, minute. It's just usually every half hour you can put some social media / wrote this many words, or had lunch, or, whatever. And you do that for a couple of days, you'll see your patterns. You'll find where your trouble spots are. So
that's good advice.
Thanks.
Scary.
Okay,
So the second I think about that, I'm like, yeah, but then I have to be accountable for the way I'm wasting my time.
And that's what, when we do the time tracking in the class, is the very beginning. And then, so when you have that anxiety of like, oh my gosh, like this is not what I thought I was doing. I thought I was doing much better. Then I can give you the long list of things of like, how do you control the news? How do you control your email? How do you control, you know, getting invitations to things and saying yes to too many things? All of those things that can get in the way. And then you can go back and, you know, fix that time situation. And we have all kinds of different methods to do that. So.
Well, and I'm just letting y'all know now, when this is all over and I start getting invitations to say things, I am saying yes to everything in the whole world. I don't care what it is. If it involves leaving this house and seeing people I am not related to, I am going.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dawn, really, we don't turn down too many invitations for
No, I don't normally anyway, but this has just been hard. Okay, so tell us about how the people who are watching can find your class if they're interested in taking it and all that kind of stuff.
So class starts Saturday. I'm closing enrollment tomorrow. So if you're interested, I have a few spots left. You can find out at fearlessromancewriting.com. You just click on the class schedule and it will give you the link to sign up for it. But the class is going to run for a few weeks. We're doing a live video on Saturday, and then it's written lectures that you can work through at your own pace. So that if you can't, you know, stick with us, and all live videos are recorded. So if you miss something, it's not a big deal. But we're going to go over all the things I talked about here, all the different distractions and how to combat them, like all these different techniques and hacks or whatever you want to call them. We're going to cover the creativity piece that we talk so much about, of how to get that time, and then building your plan for going forward. So
what is the class called again?
It's called Fighting for Focus, Productivity for Writers. And it's a favorite class. You're getting the cheapest price. So it ended up having a lot more information than I originally planned. So I'm going to have to make it more expensive later.
Awesome. Well, I feel like there's so much more I could be doing to be productive right now. So thanks for sharing your tips with us.
Thanks for having me. And really, we're all not going to be that productive right now. We all have a little bit.
That's part of it. I'm fighting against, like, there's a big part of me that's like, you should be, it's the thing we've all been seeing, you know, oh, you should be doing all this stuff, but I don't feel like doing all this stuff.
You sit in like 3 meals a day too, and all the other things that we don't normally have to be doing.
A whole bottle of wine is not dinner.
It's not?
What told me. I don't know.
I mean, well, according to like social media, we should all be expert bakers, learning how to knit, making beautiful paintings.
I've done lots of baking, but all from box mixes, so I can't.
I put on pants today, so
that is my accomplishment. So, and we also need to mention, Nancy, that we have some classes.
That's right, we do. Well, we have one right now, but there are more coming soon. The one that is available right now is Elements of Romance. It's kind of I'm not a plotter, but it's a kind of a plotting tool that plotters or less than plotters can use to help map out their first or their 27th romance novel if they're looking for a new way to do it.
And where do they find that?
Oh, well, they can look at, you know what? We'll put a link here. It's at our Teachable site, which I have yet to link to our website. So we're just getting all the courses up and running. So bear with us a little bit, but I will make it accessible in this, in the comments here when I find the link.
Okay. And then coming up next week, we're so glad. Thank you, Roni. Thank you so much for coming and playing with us today. And then next week we have
Mindy Klasky is going to come talk about tropes, how to use them, why they're great, and other things that I don't know about yet.
It'll be fun.
Yes, it'll be fun. She's great fun.
And then after that, we are going to have, we don't have any guests for this one, but we're going to be talking about cliches in writing and things that are considered don'ts and some things that are considered do's, and when not to overuse them and that kind of thing. And then the week after that, which is the week I'm looking forward to the cliches. But the week after that, which is the week I'm looking forward to, is we're going to talk about some editor pet peeves and some things
that Dawn has grievances to air.
I do. Some things that make us bang our heads on the desk. That's all we're going to talk about. That will address some things more specific to just don't do this ever. So, and I know last week Becca Syme told everybody that every writing advice you get is a myth.
Well,
I'm going to disagree with that on some of this.
Because there are some things that you will say, don't ever do that. And then someone will do it and it will be great. So,
yes.
I mean, you have to qualify. There's an exception to every rule.
So we will do this we will phrase it then instead as do this very rarely and at your own peril.
And perhaps not if you are a brand new writer.
Yes. So that's what we have coming up. That's our plan.
That's it. All right. Well, I think we'll sign off for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Tiny White Alpaca with your festive cap. And now I'm going to go do research on alpacas because I'm curious.
Yes.
Pictures.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.